What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved icons walks onto a talk show expecting respect, but instead gets blindsided by a host who seems more interested in stirring up controversy than having a genuine conversation? Well, you're about to find out exactly what went down when Shia sat across from Joy Behar on The View. And trust me, this is not the kind of interview anyone saw coming. Before we dive into this explosive encounter, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below with your thoughts, because this story is going to leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about daytime television drama. The morning started like any other at the View studio in Manhattan. Shia had arrived early, her signature confidence radiating as she settled into the green room. She was there to promote her latest project, expecting the usual friendly banter that comes with decades of entertainment industry relationships. What she didn't expect was Joy Behar's decision to turn what should have been a celebratory interview into something far more confrontational. As the cameras rolled and the show's familiar theme music faded, Whoopi Goldberg began the introductions with her usual warmth. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a true legend with us today. She sold over 100 million records worldwide, won an Academy Award, a Grammy, an Emmy, and she's been entertaining us for more than 5 decades. Please welcome the incomparable Shia." The audience erupted in applause as Shia gracefully took a seat at the table, flashing that million-dollar smile that had captivated audiences since the 1960 seconds. She was dressed elegantly in a flowing black ensemble, her silver hair styled perfectly, looking every bit the icon she had always been. "Thank you so much for having me," Shia said warmly, her voice carrying that distinctive tone that fans had come to love. "I'm always happy to be here with you ladies." Whoopi beamed back at her. "We're thrilled to have you. Now you're here to talk about your upcoming farewell tour, which I have to say has been a long time coming." Shia laughed. That genuine laugh that made her seem both larger than life and completely down to earth. "Well, you know, I've been saying farewell for about 20 years now, so people probably don't believe me anymore, but this time I really mean it." The conversation flowed naturally as they discussed her tour plans, her legendary career, and her thoughts on the current state of the music industry. Sarah Haynes chimed in with questions about her fitness routine, while Tsunami host asked about her advocacy work. Everything was going smoothly, the kind of interview that fans tune in to see, when Joy Behar decided to shift the entire tone of the conversation. "You know, Shia," Joy began, her voice taking on that particular edge that regular viewers of The View had come to recognize as a warning sign. "I have to ask you about something that's been bothering me for years." Shia's eyebrows raised slightly, but her smile remained in place. "Oh, okay. What's that?" Joy leaned forward, her expression becoming more serious. "Don't you think it's a little hypocritical for someone like you who's had so much plastic surgery to be talking about authenticity and being true to yourself?" The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The other hosts shifted uncomfortably in their seats, clearly not expecting Joy to go there. The audience fell silent, and you could practically feel the temperature in the studio drop several degrees. Shia's smile faltered for just a moment before she composed herself. "I'm sorry. What did you just say to me?" Joy doubled down, apparently oblivious to the growing tension. "I mean, come on. We all know you've had work done, a lot of work, and yet you're always talking about self-acceptance and loving yourself as you are. Isn't that sending mixed messages to your fans?" The other hosts looked mortified. Whoopi tried to intervene. "Joy, I don't think we need to go there." But Joy waved her off. Shia straightened in her chair, her voice becoming cooler. "First of all, Joy, what I choose to do with my body is my business. Second of all, I've never hidden the fact that I've had cosmetic procedures. I've been open about it for decades. But don't you see the contradiction?" Joy pressed on, her voice becoming more aggressive. "You're telling young women to love themselves while you're constantly changing your appearance. It's like you can't practice what you preach." The tension in the studio was now palpable. Shia's famous composure was being tested in a way that few had dared to challenge before. Her voice remained steady, but there was steel beneath the silk. "Joy, I think you're confusing self-acceptance with self-improvement," Shia replied, her words carefully measured. "I've never told anyone they shouldn't make changes if it makes them feel better about themselves. What I've always said is that you should love yourself enough to make choices that are right for you, not for other people." Joy wasn't backing down. "But you're a role model. You have responsibilities to your fans. When you get surgery after surgery, you're setting an impossible standard." "Impossible standard?" Shera's voice rose slightly. "Joy, I'm 77 years old and I look fantastic because I take care of myself. That includes eating right, exercising, and yes, having some work done when I feel like it. I don't owe anyone an explanation for my personal choices. The other hosts were exchanging glances, clearly uncomfortable with where this was heading. Sarah Haynes attempted to lighten the mood. Can we maybe talk about the tour again? But Joy wasn't finished. I just think it's irresponsible. Shia, you have young fans who look up to you, and when they see you constantly altering your appearance, it sends the message that natural aging isn't acceptable. Shia's patience was wearing thin, and you could see it in her eyes. Joy, let me ask you something. When did you decide it was your job to police how other women choose to live their lives? I'm not policing anyone, Joy shot back. I'm asking legitimate questions that I think viewers want answered. No, Shia said firmly. You're being judgmental and frankly a little cruel. I came here to talk about my tour and my career, not to be lectured about my personal choices by someone who clearly has their own issues with aging and appearance. Joy's face reamed. My own issues? What's that supposed to mean? Shia looked directly at. Joy smiled, and it was the kind of smile that didn't invite you in. It measured you. Do you ever worry that your charity work, your goodness, is part of the brand, too? A hush dropped across the table. Not because it was the toughest question in the world, but because it sounded like a trap disguised as intellectual curiosity. Dolly's smile stayed in place for a beat longer than it needed to. Joy, she said gently, I don't do what I do to look good. I do it because I remember what it felt like not to have. Joy nodded as if she'd expected that answer. Sure, but you can't deny, Joy pressed, that philanthropy is convenient, especially for celebrities. It creates a shield. So, whenever someone criticizes the image, the fans say, oh, but she gives away books. The audience murmured. You could feel people shifting in their seats like they wanted to protect Dolly from the implication. Dolly's eyes narrowed just a hair, barely visible, like a curtain moving in a draft. Well, Dolly replied, still calm, if my work helps people, then I don't mind if it helps my image, too. But it wasn't built for that. Joy leaned in, delighted by the way the studio was suddenly holding its breath. Okay, but let's be honest, she said, voice sharpening. Your whole persona, sweet Dolly, kind Dolly, harmless Dolly, it's a performance, isn't it? Whoopi inhaled like she wanted to jump in, then stopped herself. Sometimes you let someone show themselves. Dolly didn't flinch. Instead, she gave Joy a small, thoughtful nod, the way you nod at someone you're choosing not to embarrass. Honey, Dolly said, everything we do in public is a performance, yours, too. A few laughs bubbled up in the audience, nervous, surprised. It wasn't a jab, it was a fact delivered with softness that made it hard to fight. Joy's eyes hardened. No, she said, mine is conversation. Yours is an act. You giggle, you flutter your eyelashes, you play the cute country doll, and somehow, people treat you like a saint. Dolly's fingers folded tighter together. Her bright nails, so perfectly Dolly, pressed gently into her own skin. She kept her voice low, steady. Joy, I've been called a lot of things. Doll isn't the worst. Joy scoffed. You're avoiding the point. I'm addressing it, Dolly answered. Maybe not the way you hoped. That line landed like a clean glass clink. The co-hosts shifted again. One looked down at her cue cards like they suddenly became fascinating. Another forced a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. Joy continued, sensing she was close to a viral moment. Here's the point. You present yourself as this symbol of empowerment, but your entire image is built around what men wanted women to look like for decades. Big hair, tiny waist, loud sparkle. It's not exactly progressive. There it was. Not curiosity, judgment. Dolly blinked slowly. When she spoke, her voice was still sweet, but no longer soft. Joy, she said, I didn't build myself to please men. I built myself to survive the world. Her words were simple, but they carried something heavier than the sequins ever could. Joy opened her mouth, ready to pounce again, but Dolly held up a finger, polite, measured, firm. And before you decide what kind of woman I am, Dolly continued, you might want to ask yourself something. Joy's face tightened. What? Dolly's smile returned, but it looked different now. It wasn't warmth, it was composure. When you look at me, Dolly asked quietly, Do you see a woman who chose her own life, or do you only see what you've been taught to resent? The studio went still. It wasn't a mic drop moment yet. It was worse for Joy. It was a mirror. Joy's lips parted. She tried to laugh it off, but the laugh came out thin. "Oh, please," she snapped. "Resent. I'm just tired of watching grown women play dress-up and calling it empowerment." The audience gasped. The holiday set suddenly felt like a stage for something darker. Dolly's eyes moved from Joy's face to the camera, then back. And for the first time, you could see it clearly. Dolly wasn't trying to win. She was trying not to lose her temper. "Joy," she said, voice still even, "I've never asked you to like my hair." Joy shrugged. "Well, it's hard not to notice it." Dolly nodded slowly. "And I've never asked you to approve of my choices," she added. Joy leaned back, smug again. "Then why are you so defensive?" Dolly paused. The pause was long enough to make the studio swallow. "Because you're not discussing my choices," Dolly said. "You're mocking them." Joy's face flushed. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Dolly asked, still quiet. "Or is that just what bullies say when they get called out?" The word bullies landed and rolled through the room like thunder. Whoopi's eyes widened. One of the co-hosts actually froze mid-breath. Joy's posture stiffened, and her tone turned sharp, too fast. "Don't call me a bully," she hissed. "I'm asking questions." Dolly's voice didn't rise. "That's the thing, Joy," Dolly replied. "Questions are meant to understand. Yours are meant to cut." Joy's smile vanished. For a brief moment, you could see the calculation behind her eyes. Push harder. Break her. Get the clip. And she did. "Well, then," Joy said, leaning forward, "let's cut to the truth. You're not the saint people think you are. You're a businesswoman who sold a fantasy, and you sold it so well, people forgot to ask who you really are." The air in the studio tightened. Even the audience, usually eager, went quiet like they sensed something sacred had been touched. Dolly didn't move, but her hands unlinked. Her shoulders lifted slightly, then settled, like someone bracing without wanting anyone to notice. Her smile faded to something neutral, controlled. And when she spoke, her voice was calm enough to scare people more than anger ever could. "Joy," she said softly, "you keep talking like you know me." Joy's eyes narrowed. "I know what you show." Dolly nodded once. "And you keep poking," she continued, "like you're hoping I'll finally snap so you can feel justified." Joy scoffed. "That's absurd." Dolly leaned in, not aggressively, not theatrically, just enough to close the distance. "No, honey," she said. "That's exactly what this is." The studio held its breath. Because Dolly Parton, America's sweetheart, had stopped being sweet. And Joy Behar had just realized she might have pushed the one person in the room who didn't need to raise a voice to destroy a narrative. Joy opened her mouth to fire back, but Dolly spoke first. "One more question from you like that," Dolly said, still quiet, "and we're going to have a very different kind of conversation." Joy blinked. For the first time all day, she didn't have a line ready, but she wasn't the type to retreat. She only smiled, thin, sharp, dangerous. "Good," Joy said, "because I'm not done." And the way she said it made the producers behind the cameras reach for their headsets, because everyone knew now this wasn't an interview anymore. It was a collision. The producers should have cut to commercial. Everyone in the room felt it, that invisible pressure when a conversation has gone too far, but no one wants to be the one to pull the cord. The holiday candles still flickered behind the desk, absurdly calm, as if unaware that the atmosphere had turned sharp enough to draw blood. Joy Behar adjusted in her seat, clearly energized now. This was her terrain, conflict framed as conversation. Dolly sat back slightly, hands resting together again, but the softness was gone. What remained was composure sharpened into something deliberate. Joy cleared her throat. "You know," she said, feigning reflection, "people love to protect you, Dolly. That's fascinating to me. You say one sweet thing, and the audience applauds like you've solved world peace." A few uncomfortable laughs scattered through the studio. Dolly didn't react. "I mean," Joy continued, waving a hand casually, "you talk about kindness and empowerment, but you've never really challenged the system. You benefited from it. You played into it. That's not bravery, that's marketing. The word marketing hung heavy. Whoopi shifted forward. Joy, no, let her answer. Joy interrupted quickly. I'm genuinely curious. The lie in that sentence was obvious to everyone except Joy herself. Dolly inhaled slowly through her nose. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't visible. But it was the kind of breath you take when you're deciding whether to keep the peace or finally speak the truth. I've challenged plenty, Dolly said calmly. Just not the way you seem to prefer. Oh. Joy raised an eyebrow. How so? Dolly turned her head slightly toward the audience before answering. Not for approval, but for grounding. I challenge poverty by refusing to stay poor, she said. I challenged illiteracy by putting books into children's hands. I challenged exploitation by owning my work. Joy smirked. And you challenge beauty standards by exaggerating them. A sharp intake of breath rippled through the audience. Dolly's eyes finally hardened. Joy, she said, her voice still controlled, but unmistakably firm. You keep confusing your opinion with authority. Joy laughed, a short, dismissive sound. That's rich. No, Dolly replied. What's rich is sitting behind a desk judging women's lives from a distance. The applause this time was louder, more confident. People were no longer unsure which side they were on. Joy's smile vanished completely. You're deflecting, she snapped. This whole persona, this I'm just a sweet country girl act, it's manipulative. You use charm so people won't question you. Dolly leaned forward slightly, her elbows just brushing the table. Let me be very clear, she said. I've never asked anyone not to question me. Joy folded her arms. Then answer this honestly. If you're so empowered, why cling to an image that was designed by men? That was the line. Not because it was new, but because it was relentless. Dolly stared at Joy for a long moment, long enough that the studio went completely silent. Even the crew behind the cameras stopped moving. When she spoke again, her voice was steady, but stripped of warmth. I didn't cling to anything, Dolly said. I chose. Joy scoffed. You call that choice? Yes, Dolly answered. Because choice doesn't have to look like yours to be valid. Joy shook her head. You're romanticizing conformity. Dolly smiled faintly, not kindly. And you're weaponizing contempt. The words landed with surgical precision. Joy opened her mouth to retort, but Dolly didn't let her. You know what bothers me most, Joy. Dolly continued. It's not that you don't like my hair. It's not that you don't respect my work. Joy rolled her eyes. It's that you keep talking like there's only one correct way to be a woman, and surprise, it just happens to look like you. The studio erupted. Applause broke out before anyone could stop it. A few people even stood. Whoopi exhaled sharply, half impressed, half alarmed. Joy's face flushed crimson. That's absurd, she snapped. You're projecting. No, Dolly said quietly. I'm observing. Joy leaned forward now, voice raised, irritation bleeding through her words. I'm tired of women like you getting a free pass because you smile and donate money. You don't get to avoid scrutiny just because people find you likable. Dolly nodded slowly. And you don't get to disguise hostility as scrutiny just because you enjoy tearing people down. Joy's jaw tightened. That's insulting. Dolly met her gaze without blinking. So is being called a cartoon. So is being reduced to my appearance. So is having my life's work dismissed as a costume. The room was electric now. This wasn't daytime TV anymore. This was a reckoning. Joy raised her voice further. You want honesty? Fine. I think your whole image infantilizes women. I think it tells them they need to be cute to be accepted, and I think it's irresponsible. The silence afterward was brutal. Dolly's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes did. She straightened her jacket slowly, deliberately. You don't get to tell women what empowers them, Dolly said, each word measured. Not you, not me, no one. Joy laughed bitterly. Spare me the lecture. Dolly's voice dropped lower. This isn't a lecture, she said. This is a boundary. Joy blinked. For the last 20 minutes, Dolly continued. You've talked at me, not with me. You've mocked my appearance, questioned my motives, and dismissed my choices. Joy opened her mouth, But Dolly raised a hand, not to silence her, but to stop the spiral. I stayed, Dolly said, because I believed you'd eventually ask something worth answering. The words stung more than any insult. Joy's composure cracked. You're being dramatic. Dolly nodded once. That's what people say when they don't like being confronted. Joy stood abruptly, chair scraping loudly against the floor. I don't have to sit here and be accused of bullying, she snapped. This is my show. Dolly looked at her calmly. That, Dolly replied, is exactly the problem. Joy froze. This isn't your show, Dolly continued. It's a platform, and platforms come with responsibility. Joy's voice rose to a near shout. You don't get to lecture me about responsibility. Dolly leaned back as finally exhaling. You're right, she said. I don't. She paused. But I do get to decide how I'm treated. The room went deathly quiet. Joy stared at her, stunned. Not because Dolly was angry, but because she wasn't. I came here in good faith, Dolly said, standing now, slowly, calmly. I answered your questions. I accepted your tone. I even gave you the benefit of the doubt. She picked up her mug, placed it gently back on the table. But I won't stay where respect isn't mutual. Joy scoffed. So now you're walking out. Dolly met her eyes. I haven't decided yet, she said, but you're making the decision very easy. The producers were now visibly panicking behind the cameras. Headsets pressed tighter. Fingers hovered over buttons. Joy crossed her arms, defiant. If you leave, that's on you. Dolly smiled, sadly this time. No, honey, she replied. That's on you. The audience erupted again, louder than before. Dolly turned slightly toward Whoopi. Thank you for inviting me, she said sincerely. I'm sorry it turned into this. Whoopi nodded, clearly torn. So am I. Joy's voice cut in sharply. We're not done. Dolly paused at that, turned back, looked Joy directly in the eyes. Yes, she said quietly. We are. And for the first time since the interview began, Joy Behar had nothing to say. Not yet. But everyone could feel it coming. Because Dolly Parton hadn't walked out. Not yet. And when she finally did, it would not be quiet. Joy Behar broke the silence first. You know what? She said sharply. If you can't handle tough conversation, maybe you shouldn't come on a live show. The words were loud, defensive, rushed. They didn't land the way she wanted. Dolly stood still for a moment, her back straight, her expression calm, but no longer forgiving. The audience watched in complete silence. Even the holiday lights behind them felt dimmer now. Joy, Dolly said softly, turning back one last time. Tough conversation isn't the same thing as disrespect. Joy rolled her eyes. Oh, please. You're just upset because someone finally challenged you. Dolly smiled faintly. No, she replied. I'm upset because you confuse cruelty with courage. That did it. Joy scoffed, throwing her hands up. Fine. Walk out. Prove my point. Dolly looked around the table, at Whoopi, at the other co-hosts, at the audience that had been holding its breath for the better part of an hour. Then she nodded. I think I will. Gasps rippled through the studio. Dolly reached for her microphone, unclipped it carefully, and placed it on the table. Not angrily, not dramatically. Gently, like she was setting down something that no longer belonged to her. I came here to talk about music, books, and hope, she said, her voice steady. Not to be talked down to, not to be mocked, and not to be turned into a spectacle. She looked directly at Joy. I wish you well, Dolly added. But I won't stay where kindness is treated like weakness. Joy opened her mouth. Too late. Dolly turned and walked off the set. The audience stood. Applause broke out. Loud, sustained, unmistakable. Not the polite kind, the kind that fills a room and makes it impossible to pretend nothing happened. Joy sat frozen. Whoopi cleared her throat slowly. Well, she said carefully. We'll be right back. But there was no going back. Because in that quiet, controlled walk-off, without shouting, without insults, Dolly Parton had drawn the sharpest line of all, and everyone watching knew exactly who crossed it. Sometimes the loudest statement isn't made with words. It's made by knowing when to walk away. Dolly Parton didn't shout. She didn't insult back. She simply refused to stay where respect no longer existed. If you believe dignity is strength, if you believe kindness doesn't mean weakness, and if you think moments like this deserve to be remembered, tap like to show your support. Subscribe to Pressure Point for more stories where power shifts on live television. And tell us in the comments, did Dolly do the right thing by walking away? Or should she have stayed and fought back?